Hey, welcome, guys. It's me, your buddy Gabe Eltape. It is Friday. You finally made it here. For those of you that work the Monday through Friday, when you're a freelancer, Friday kind of doesn't mean crap. We work all the time. I don't work on Sundays. That's the Lord's Day. But I got a great guest with me here. Every time I intro the show after the intro music, I'm always worried that my microphone's off because I used to mute it, and I don't need to mute it. So I'm always worried that I'm doing a little silent monologue, but I hope I'm not. Door Kickers is a great looking comic. The great Scott McCullough is with me today, and I want to welcome him in. Let's see. How you doing, Scott?
Hey, man. How are you?
Really good. Really good. Welcome, man. So it's Friday here in the America's finest city, San Diego, but not where you are. You are coming to us from the future.
Yeah.
Can you tell me who wins the Chiefs-Broncos games tomorrow, since it's already tomorrow where you are?
Well, I mean, who cares about the Broncos, right?
Oh, damn it. I'm born in Colorado. How dare you, sir?
I know. No, it's it's a Saturday morning here, so it's hell living in the future.
All right. Well, no betting tips for me then, huh?
I could give you betting tips, but you're not going to like it as a Chargers fan. I mean, not a Chargers fan, as a Broncos fan.
Okay. All right. I know they're going to lose. They're going to get demolished. But this
you said San Diego earlier, and my former team got thrown in my head there.
Okay. Like everyone who lives in San Diego, I'm not a fan of the Chargers because I'm not from here.
Yeah.
San Diego, for those of you out there that don't know, it has the most military population of any city like on Earth, basically. So that's why all the Padre and Charger games don't have a home field advantage. My wife explained that to me. She's actually a native. She's one of the few people here that's actually born and raised here. So, you go to a Pirates game, you go to a Giants game, whatever, Dodgers, it's always going to be the majority. So speaking of military and all that, we've got a great book here. Door Kickers, it's got 3 days left. It's in the description, but I want, Scott, I want you to go ahead and introduce it to us. Give us a quick rundown of what this book is about. The artwork looks fantastic, man.
Yeah, so Door Kickers this is the second book. The first book did really great. And now, so we're just kind of building on that success with the second book. So Door Kickers, what is it? It's a special operations team that works for a secretive branch of the U.S. government, and they tackle, supernatural threats and bad guys who use supernatural threats. They do what they can to eliminate the threat, but they also try to keep it secret from regular folks like you and me. This is the kind of stuff that you don't want getting out there because you could see how irrational we are with things that that don't happen, like that insurrection anniversary we had yesterday. Just think about how crazy they would get.
The insurrection.
Right. If other things, I got a good meme for that later. But just think. I mean, you got to kind of. It's kind of like a different take on Men in Black. How Men in Black was all about stopping the threat and then kind of hiding it from the public. Well, these guys don't have little gadgets to hide it from the public. They just kind of operate on the down low, and they tend to use their guns and their brains in equal measure to fix these problems.
Well, it's got fantastic. I saw this earlier when I was looking through the campaign earlier today, and that eye there and the grotesque, like rotting zombie body, it really gave me like a Resident Evil vibe.
Yeah.
I mean? So is in this adventure in Door Kickers, this is the second volume of it, right? You already had one story that came before. Is that kind of what our protagonists are going against? They're going against some sort of mutants or
so they show up in Brazil to investigate this substance that's resonated throughout the astral spectrum, and so this substance, and they just call it the blight or the goo, right? It's this substance that has leaked into our world from the astral world or the world, a different dimension that's near ours. And because it comes from a different type of world, it is very mutagenic. It completely alters our cellular structure. And in some case that just kind of causes explosive cancers that just kill you instantly. But in the case of this monster here that you're looking at on your screen, it changes him and it connects him to something that we don't really, they don't, they don't really understand the full implications of this. And, this kind of goes into the longer story, what is on the other side that is causing this to happen. And, who's pulling the strings from this other dimension.
Very cool. I love this comment by Richard Falk. He says, door kickers, they make ghosts of ghosts. I do like that. Now that we've been going for a minute here, let me welcome the chat. Just these names I recognize. Garth is here, and of course Tari's here. Wiley J. Draws is here. Leg Kick One, Rosenettle, all my buddies are. Oh, Bobby Campbell, the Oracle is here. He turned 34 today. Happy birthday, friend. Lord Crackhead is here. All kinds of great folks are here. Let me ask you this. Okay, so what I really loved the Call of Duty video games, the first like 3, maybe the first 2 of the modern ones. I loved how they were set like now. They were set in 2007 or whatever. What time period is this set in? Because you're talking about Brazil, and I'm assuming, is it like the favelas from Modern Warfare 2, I guess, or whatever? But is it set in the future, or is it?
No, it's set current day. So there's a lot of parallels with what really happens. The thing that brought me to this idea is I was always a fan of like H.P. Lovecraft and things like that.
Oh, okay.
And some other kind of supernatural stuff. Like I was a big Dungeons and Dragons fan as a kid. Big comics fan. In my college years, I got really into Warhammer 40K.
Oh,
and so
goodness, I love that.
Yeah, so this is, so there's a lot of, if you know Warhammer 40K, there's a lot of that kind of influence in this. But the whole idea is these kind of supernatural, otherworldly, warp spawn creatures. And how would a active, a realistic military special operations kind of unit, how would they fight back against this? And partially it's they use their skill but they also have to draw on other kind of powers. So this is where you get like magic bullets that they shoot and things like this that, so it's kind of like an extrapolation of some of the stuff that you would see like in D&D where, like a certain type of creature has to be, you have to use a certain type of weapon, like only a magic weapon per, for instance, could, damage, some type of creature. And so, that's why, one of the characters in this has a magic sword that, that is designed, was designed in the 1800s or blessed in the 1800s to fight demons. They called them demons back then. They know a little more. They know maybe it's not necessarily strictly a demon, but, there's also power, seance later.
Richard Falk again with the one-liner. Door kicker, shoot first, seance later.
I'm using some of these, man. I'm stealing.
Hey, I like this. Wiley J. Draw says, sounds like it would make a good movie if done right. Yeah, let me ask you about D&D. I never played it seriously, and I didn't play Warhammer very much, but I collected it because as an artist, I always loved, we didn't have TV growing up. My mom would like, be creative. That was her command to me and my brother. Go outside, be creative. So I made dioramas, model airplanes. If they didn't make a Star Wars man or a G.I. Joe, I'd make him myself out of Legos or clay or whatever.
Right.
I made my own Ninja Turtles van because I couldn't afford to buy one. So I made it out of cardboard and painted it and everything. So I always loved making Warhammer, and I love the artwork of Dungeons and Dragons, but I never played them much. My brother played them. What kind of gamer in D&D were you? I'm very curious about this because it always matches people's personality. I'm 6'4", I'm muscular, I love football. So I was always attracted to the orcs. You know what I mean? And the aggressiveness and all that. Like that. And, my brother was more like elves and Eldar and a more thoughtful this and that. What were you attracted to like in D&D Warhammer? I'm very curious about that.
Yeah. So oddly enough, I think you're right. I think, what you play really kind of is a reflection on you. So like in D&D, I was always a human. I didn't want any of these racial abilities, like the elves were very attractive, not just, pretty looking, but they were attractive because they had, some dexterity and intelligence modifiers, things like that.
Right.
Is the idea, that goes back to Tolkien, elves live forever. So it allows us to be able to kind of, kind of act out some of our, immortality fantasies or whatever. But no, to get back to my play style, I was a human, and I almost always was a fighter. I did kind of get into like fighters, right? So like I've played Rangers and Paladins, but I also really just kind of went back to that kind of brawling fighter kind of guy, like you were talking about the aggression and the kind of hand-to-hand melee combat, things like that. But, I like the simplicity of the world is I am a hammer and the world is full of nails, right?
Okay. Agreed.
I really like that.
Yeah, the direct approach is often the best approach.
Well, and in Warhammer, I was a huge Dark Angels fan, so I literally my early years, I bought only Space Marine miniatures, and Dark Angels was my chapter that I went with, and then in my later years, I started kind of drifting towards the Imperial Guard, so I kind of like the idea of regular people actually able to make a difference in this world where everybody is practically a demigod.
Sure. Yeah, there's something heroic about the triumph of the human spirit, I guess, where you're a regular person and you stand up to it. This is a non sequitur. It doesn't have anything to do with what we're doing, but someone asked me a direct question. I want to ask you, would you like to join Getter? It's better than Twitter. I can't answer that because I don't know much about Getter, but I am excited for Trump's Truth social media coming out on President's Day. I'm very excited about that. But back to Warhammer. So Warhammer and Lovecraft and all that vibe, I think that's fantastic. If you guys don't know much about Warhammer and stuff like that, I'm sure you know about Warcraft out there. But yeah, the creepiness, the splitting open of like a warp or dimension and this ooze coming in and mutating people and monsters coming through. I think that's fantastic. I checked out the trailer here. I guess we could check it out really quick.
Yeah.
So let me play that real quick. And then then I got another question for you real quick. No, dude, that looks fantastic. I do like. I don't know if you edited that or who edited that. But the
no, I didn't. Yeah, I didn't edit that, but that was a fan that did that. Yeah.
So the artwork looks fantastic. Do we? Is the artist, is he or she on Twitter? Or the art team, is it a penciler, inker, and a colorist, or is it all one person?
So both the artists. So Farah, I think, is on Twitter. Farah Nurmaliza, she's my colorist. She's been with me since I've been working on these books in CG. So she's literally worked on everything that I've been part of. She did Peregrine, and then Doug came on with Peregrine. And that team is such a great team, and as you can see from this art, they really work together well. And so Doug Franchen, the pencil inker, he came over, and we just put it together to do this book together as well. He actually, so interesting. In the first book, Doorkicker's Panzer Demon, there's a backup story. It's a 10-page backup story, and it's the original Doorkicker story. So it's the first ever Doorkicker story, and it's from an anthology book from back in I want to say 2014, and he did the 10-page backup with me.
Find some art for it. Sorry.
Yeah, I think you should be able to open that up if you hit about the campaign.
Here we go.
Yeah. And so he did the art for the original 10-page backup story that was in this anthology. And so we've always wanted to work together. We've stayed friends ever since then. And that alternate cover by Narwhal was great on that first book.
Yeah, he's quite the savant. I'm going to have him on my show soon just to pick his brain and see what's going on in there.
Well, the thing I love about his art is it's almost it's like the best sell from a scene in an animated and if it's an action, it's, it's got that movement,
Yeah, he really has a very, very good grasp of cinematics. You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
yeah,
I think
absolutely.
he would be with very little practice, a pretty good director of photography for films. He
Oh, yeah,
really
yeah.
gets the composition and the lighting. People the people that don't like his work say, "Oh, well, his rendering is fast and loose," and it's like that. You're
Well,
missing the
I,
point.
I
Jack
can tell you,
Kirby's heroes were ugly, ugly
yeah.
people, but his composition is amazing.
Well,
So
I can tell you right now, if I got, somebody mentioned doing a Door Kickers movie, for me it would be a TV show,
oh
like a 10 episode, HBO style, hour long, Netflix or something like that type of TV
right.
show. And if I had any say at all in how it was made, I would get Narwhal to do the storyboards, man. I would heap all kinds of money on him to try to get him to do that, because
It
I
would be
think,
fun if it was a show. It could be like a X-Files Monster of the Week. You
yeah,
could have the one big story in the background, and then every week you have the different supernatural charms. We got a question from Tari Owe. How did you come up with the idea for Door Kickers?
So I'm going to admit that for me, the idea was completely original. I'd never seen anything like this out there. I mean, like I said, it was influenced by things like Dungeons and Dragons and Warhammer, but these were all fantastical kind of settings. For me, the idea came directly from my involvement with deployments in my military experience. I spent a year in Iraq. I went to Afghanistan. I went to Syria. So I've seen all these kind of places, and I've interacted with some very high end individuals. I was never special forces or special operations or anything like that. But I was in units.
That's
that
what
were
a special forces secret agent would say.
Trust me.
I'm joking.
Look at my gut. But I worked alongside with guys like that and I came to be very kind of respectful for their competency and just in how they solve problems. And, sometimes they were very intellectual, but the other times they were very direct. And so I really liked that. And so that made me think like, well, how would these kind of people approach these supernatural kind of threats? Well, a lot of the tier 1 special operators, they have the kind of brain that makes it very hard for them to, be overcome by fear or overcome by emotion or something like that. And part of that is condition, but part of it is like, I think the people who are the perfect candidates for those kind of jobs just have a little bit different brain than what the rest of us have. And they're able to.
I feel like you're saying that's inborn and then taught. They're naturally that way to a degree, and then of course the military home.
I would say the most successful ones. That's probably true, right? Like a natural athlete, right?
Right.
A natural athlete is not something anybody can just be turned into. There has to be some certain kind of things that make them. And so, one of the things that we think about is physical attributes, right? But I can tell you the thing I think, I've gotten to know some guys from like Delta Force and some of these other tier 1 kind of, and the thing that almost every one of them tells me about is like, listen, it's got to come from within, right? It's this kind of almost obsession with a result. That they want a result, so they're going to be obsessive about it until they get that result. And I don't think that's just something you see in these elite commandos. I think it's something you see in anybody who's super successful.
It's intrinsic motivation. If you're motivated from the outside, you're depending on someone or something.
It's like a passion, right? I mean, and not to say that Ethan is a elite commando, but he's a great example within CG. Sure. Somebody who is like, he is absolutely focused on Cyberfrog and making that successful. Right. And while some people say, oh, well, he doesn't draw enough. No, he draws exactly as much as he needs to draw because in CG, we also know success is not just based on the output. If that were the case, then Sean Gordon Murphy's campaign would have done $2 million. but he did.
Leonardo da Vinci completed 12 paintings.
Right. That's right.
Right? He wouldn't even qualify for a master's program at a state school. Okay, he completed 12 paintings. Look that up. It's true. He made thousands of drawings and like preliminary stuff, but like complete.
But he was a polymath, right? So I mean, that's a little different.
Yeah,
he was an expert in so many things. Oh, but what we're talking about,
I think Walter Isaacson, he's an autobiographer. He did a great Leonardo da Vinci autobiography. Check that out if you want to learn about Leonardo. And then he also did Benjamin Franklin, a great one on him too. I think it's Walter Isaacson. I'll have to look that up in my audiobooks here.
Anyway, we got a little bit off the topic. But the question was, how did I come up with it? So the idea is I want to take on the idea of how these type of guys would attack a problem like this. And so the characters that I have created are a mashup of different high functioning individuals I've met in several different fields. And anyway, so that's where it came from. And and as good an idea as DoorKickers is, it's such a good idea that several other people have come up with things that are similar to it that I wasn't even aware of either before or after. If you go on YouTube and you type in SCP, SCP is this great, this is an open source kind of.
That's the Sane Clown Posse.
The same company, right? SCP, though, I can't remember what it stands for. And the funny thing is when I find things that are similar to DoorKickers, I purposely try not to look at it because I don't want any of those ideas to become, kind of embed in my head and then derivative. My ideas become derivative. Like a great example is Stranger Things, right? When I saw Stranger Things, a lot of the ideas that I want to bring out in DoorKickers exist within Stranger Things, but I had these ideas for DoorKickers way before I ever saw Stranger Things. So I'm conscious of Stranger Things because it's so huge, and I make kind of references to it, i.e., like certain things that I use the language of some of the stuff. Like they have the Upside Down. Well, I've got this other realm that's kind of next to ours that is similar but different.
Sure.
But mine is way more alien. It's not like a reflection.
How interesting, because a lot of the references in Stranger Things are from Dungeons and Dragons, the Gorgon.
That's right.
And then
exactly.
You love Dungeons and Dragons and all that. So I think it's completely legitimate. Everyone is in the cultural zeitgeist. We're all looking at what's in front of us culturally, news, sports, entertainment, romance, religion, and we do draw similar conclusions. I spent a few years in college writing a Garfield Dilbert style comic strip, and I've seen this one joke I wrote in college in movies and TV. It was the straight man and the silly guy. That was my classic pair in my strip. And the one guy said that he had lost 150 pounds over the Christmas break. And the other guy tells him, "You don't look any different to me." And he says, "No, I broke up with Sheila." You know what I mean? He said he lost 150 pounds of ugly fat, and I've seen that joke in huge movies and stuff since I wrote that joke on my own. So I think, it's totally legitimate, your thing, even though it has similar things, because they're drawing from what you're drawing from, man.
Right.
But I want to ask a question to back up on DoorKickers a little bit.
Sure.
Do you need to have read the first one to get this one?
I don't think you need to have read it. I won't say that you'll be lost, but at the same time, your experience will definitely be enhanced if you've read this one. Same thing with like the ash can, right? Chronologically, the ash can occurs before any of these other stories. But if you don't read the ash can, you just won't have an understanding of the character that's in that ash can. It won't take away from your. And that was another thing. This is something new for me. This is the first campaign where I ever offered an ash can. And so this has been a great kind of addition. It's a 20-page kind of side story that gives some background on the most mysterious member of the team, which is his name is Stillen. And you don't really know what his deal is, because at the end of the first book he got disintegrated, right? So he's gone. So now it's kind of like, well, how is he in the second book, And so clearly there's more going on with that guy than meets the
Yes.
eye. So the ash can is a great natural addition to the larger Door Kicker story. So I totally encourage people, if you haven't seen the first book, get the first book. Like that, if you're not a Door Kickers, you haven't had any Door Kickers, this is what I would recommend. The perk that's on your screen right now, Door Kickers 1 and 2 for $60. Buy that and then get the ash can as an add-on, and that'll give you all 3 books, and everything Door Kickers that's ever happened will be in those 3 books, and then you'll be totally caught up on the bigger story. And there's some old bad guys that from Stillen's past that are going to come into this. They're into the newer book. The bad guys, the revealed bad guys in the end of this story, are connected to these old evil people because they connect from the original source. Where Stillen and I don't want to give it away, but
don't spoil. Let them have the fun of figuring that out.
If you want to spoil it, actually, I've already put some of the spoilers in, so you can scroll down and there's a little image for the ash can. So literally, if you go back up.
Oh, sorry, I missed it. Where?
Yeah, right here. Every page of the ash can is right there.
Oh, so if you squint really hard, you don't have to buy it, guys. No, just kidding. Quick question from Emerald Avenger 2814. Hail Gabe, hail Scott. Is the campaign going into demand?
Yes, it is going to go in demand, but this is a great opportunity for me to mention that not every perk that's available today will be available after we go in demand. For instance, if you want to get drawn in and killed, do it now, because that's going away. Because we have to lock in that art.
Right, of course.
So that'll go away. And then also, if you signed up as part of the mailing list prior to launch, the secret perks that were associated with the mailing list will also go away.
Okay. So you lose the ability to be drawn into the book and the secret mailing list perks.
Yeah.
And just kind of circling back on what I was saying. See, Norm Macdonald probably wrote that joke before I wrote it in college. So that's the thing. We're all in the soup of the same culture. And when you're writing comedy or writing anything, you'll come to the same conclusions. I remember I made fun of the concept of being a movie file or a foodie or whatever. It's like, no, you like food. Oh, you're the one that likes food. You're so special. So I made a joke about being a foodie or whatever. I saw some comedian lady do the same joke on Twitter and got like 20,000 retweets and likes and all that. So my daughter's a comedian. She's a stand-up comic. She's been one for years. And
very cool.
So she operates in that world where you'll hear a joke and then someone's joke is like your joke and all that kind of stuff. So
you need to get her hooked up with Chrissy Mayer.
I don't know who that is.
You got to, dude. As a big wheel in CG like you are, you're
Well,
you are. I mean, you're entertaining us on Ethan's show on a regular basis.
Oh, that is so much fun going on there, just goofing.
I know, dude.
I locker room.
No, totally. That's exactly. I feel like like I've gotten to know a lot of those guys outside of and so like the fact that I can interact with Billy Tucci on Twitter and I've been on his channel, and then I see Billy with Ethan, and I've been on Ethan's channel a couple times. And, it's very much a sense of like knowing people without knowing them.
Yeah. Hey, we got some backers. It was at 14, like 7 when we came on.
Yeah. No, that's awesome.
If you're watching on you back, let me know. I'm very happy that you guys did that, but thank you so much.
It's worth noting we're less than $100 away from 15,000. At 15,000, we get to ink the ash can.
Oh, right now the ash can's just pencil, huh?
Yeah, and I've got Jimmy Reyes on. Yeah, I've got Jimmy Reyes on deck to do that inking.
Jimmy. I know Jimmy's work. He's working.
Yeah, he's really good.
I don't think I'm supposed to say. Never mind. Some secret stuff I know about. Shh.
Right.
Quiet, Gabe. So so this is awesome, man. I really like this, so let me back all the way out of Door Kickers, and you have your other books. I think it was Peregrine.
Yep, Peregrine.
How do you say that? I know it's a bird. How do you pronounce that exactly? Peregrine or peregrine?
Peregrine. Yeah. It's like
Okay.
it's like para and then grin.
Grinning, yeah. What moved you into comics and CG specifically? Did you work at Marvel or DC or Dark Horse? Did you publish anything there? Or did you just saw what
So
you liked in CG and said, you know what, I've always wanted to do this. Here's a chance for me to show what I've got. Or how did you start in comics?
I've been I'm sure like you, I've been a fan of comics since I was a kid, right?
Okay.
I really onboarded into comics in the early issues of GI Joe,
Oh,
and I would really love. I mean, my dad was in the army, so I was always a kid that liked the army, and I played war outside in the woods with my friends, and
right,
I was either playing Dungeons and Dragons or I was playing war, right?
right.
So the GI Joe was an immediate attraction
Of
for
course.
me, and those Larry Hama stories, kind of transitioning beyond just influence in comics, but Larry Hama's long form stories where he had those big arcs of characters, and he was handling a lot of different characters, and he did them all justice, and he gave the bad guys real motivations. And so these were, when a character died or a character was in some sort of jeopardy, you cared about it, right?
Right. Yeah.
At about the same time, a little after I got into GI Joe, X-Men, really kind of Uncanny X-Men. So those, John Romita Jr. years,
Oh,
Chris Claremont, I really loved. I mean, his entire run is a
amazing.
master class. Yeah.
One of the great runs. It's one of the top 5 runs in comics, probably. So
Right. Well, I would even go so far as to say, as a writer, it's probably top 1 or 2.
yeah,
But as a whole, those that John Romita years were great, and then it transitioned into a lot of the guys who turned into Image. They all kind of cut their teeth on X-Men as well, and so those were
right.
the thing. That was kind of like the place. I mean, I had other things that I really liked. I liked the Avengers. During the Secret Wars era, that's when I kind of got sucked into the Avengers. And then, same thing, there were several others, I like Doctor Strange, and I liked Cloak and Dagger. That was another one that kind of,
Okay.
I wasn't expecting to like that. And somehow as a kid, I got sucked into that one. But, these were this was kind of, the kind of stuff that I liked. And I was definitely a Marvel guy. I was never a DC guy because I don't know. It didn't resonate with me.
I think,
And then,
I was a Marvel guy growing up too. It was Jim Lee's X-Men that got me into it. And it always just seemed so much more fun. And, I turned into a DC guy because I got hired there, and my favorite
yeah,
artist, Jim Lee, he went over there back in 98 or whatever. So I turned into a DC guy. But I've always, when I worked at DC, I would always look across the business like, man, they're having a lot of fun over there. There's
yeah,
something, when I think of Marvel, I think of like bright red. I don't know. I know their logo's red, but I just think of liveliness and I just think of excitement and stuff like that. And
yeah.
DC, it always seems more serious and more grounded and more adult, and and that's good, but also not good. But
Straight laced, right?
yeah,
Whereas, the Marvel was in touch with the streets,
well, and it's a shame, and I don't want to start shitting on feminists or SJWs. People know I don't like it. I do want to focus more on social media, talking about what I love instead of what I hate.
Yeah,
But it's a shame to see that goofiness and joy disappear from the mainstream, where it was okay to be corny, it was okay to be wacky. And I don't watch a lot of TV, but one guy I really love is Guy Fieri.
yeah.
And I always know someone is like a bad person or some got a personality problem if they hate him. You don't have to like him. There's no accounting for taste. But if you hate Guy Fieri, it's like that's you, because he's just like nice. He's silly.
Yeah.
He doesn't care if he embarrasses himself, and he's just helping independent families make their restaurants more successful. So I'm always like, when someone hates him, I'm like, aha. You can't stand someone being silly and goofy because you're too insecure. And I see that in the mainstream from Marvel and DC. They're like too cool for school. They're
Yeah.
worried about seeing the adventures of the Dino Ace the Bat Hound and the Dynamut, and they always do it ironically instead of sincerely loving this stuff.
Well,
So yeah,
another
go ahead.
another legend that I've got a chance to rub shoulders with here in CG on several streams has been Mike Barron. And Mike Barron's got a great point.
One of my best friends.
Door knockers. And
I
one of
think
the
that was an autocorrect. I think autocorrect got him.
I think that one of the things that he is spot on about, and I've heard him talk about on numerous occasions, is that first things first, all of the things that we're dealing with have to be entertaining. Like these stories have to be entertaining,
Mm-hmm.
and they're just not entertaining. They're starting not from the standpoint of okay, first it has to be entertaining, then let's come up with an idea. It's like, let's come up with a political point of view, and then let's craft a story around that.
Right.
And so because of that, everything becomes a slave to the dogma, right?
Right.
And whether it's gender inclusion, or whether it's sexual identity, or just identity
Oh, yeah.
politics in general. And
Yeah.
and that's, I'm not saying that there isn't a place for diversity and things like that. I mean, look at the New Mutants back in the day when Chris Claremont, that was
Right.
SJW stuff done right. That was that was social justice done correctly. That was the
Right.
diversity done correctly, because the first and foremost thing was an entertaining story. He then
Right.
just put these diverse elements into this entertaining story. And back then when I first read the graphic novel, the New Mutants graphic novel, I didn't think a thing of it. I
No.
didn't think like, well, there's too many girls, or there's, what is this Asian girl doing, or what is this Native American girl doing, or why does the white guy have to be a dummy from a hick from Kentucky, which I
Right.
happen to be, so. But anyway, the point is that it's not the diversity, and the inclusion that's the problem. It's the slavish nature of these uncreative, unentertaining people who make these kind of things. Now, you're right. I don't want to get into too deep onto the negatives
Well,
and things
speak
like this,
freely. Speak freely.
but that being said, I mean, that's what's really happening to these places like Marvel and DC that we loved so much growing up, but they're
Yeah.
not the same places we came to love.
Yeah. Well, my next comic, my Indiegogo, is with David Williams. I know I had announced another one, but the artist for that, it's on the back burner for now. I don't want to go into detail, but I've got one with David Williams. He's an amazing illustrator for about 30 years now. Cartoon Network, Marvel, DC.
Sure.
It's amazing. And we're doing, I'm not going to go into detail, we're doing superheroes, classic superheroes. And this book basically is our love letter to Marvel and DC.
Oh, very
It's
cool.
classic action with one of the best artists I've ever worked with. I'm the writer and the colorist, which is an unusual thing, but for me it works. And he's going to be illustrating this thing. And man, we're meeting on the phone like 3 times yesterday and multiple times. And I'm writing all the script stuff and I'm re-listening to these audiobooks. Do you know who William Bernhardt is?
Yep.
Okay. His Red Sneaker Writers books. It's
Okay.
a series of about 8 or 9 books on how to write. And they're like 2.5 hours each, an audiobook. I've listened to these things over and over and over and take notes, story structure, plot, characterization, dialogue. His stuff is amazing. And the problem with the SJW stuff, where they go to the identity first, and then that's the center of everything, is the characters aren't likable because the writer is preaching at you and it becomes dogmatic and ideological. Because he was pointing out, I was listening today at this book on character. I'm almost through it today. Sherlock Holmes is a jerk, but no one has been like more movies than Sherlock Holmes. And like, he's one of the most famous characters in all of fiction. And we like him because he's good at something. You know what I mean? He's the smartest man. He can figure out any problem. Nobody would notice the details he'd notice. He has a quality that has nothing to do with being a white, straight male. You know what I mean?
Right.
We're not talking about that. When they start telling me that Superman is gay or whatever's happening, it's like, that is like the least interesting thing about him. What's interesting about Superman is very simple. He has the power to be God on earth, basically, and rule as a tyrant, and no one could stop him.
Right.
But because of his Midwestern Kansas values that his parents instilled in him, his adoptive parents that raised him, he has restraint and kindness and mercy and truth and justice and the American way and all that. And that's why I walked out of DC. It's like, you can't do that, you guys. I mean, you legally can. It's like watching someone own a Ferrari and then they don't paint on it and smash the windows. Like, legally you can do it. It's your Ferrari, but man, you're stupid for doing that.
Right.
And to pretend that that Superman's American heritage isn't what makes him a hero is insulting and a joke and dishonest. Because again, it's not his laser vision or his super speed or flying. His heroicism comes from his mercy and kindness and restraint and his generosity. And those are his American values, not his Kryptonian ones. It feels so weird and silly to argue about fictional characters that were made for children. But when you think about it on deeper levels, like, no, this is our cultural like mythos, man. This is our Thor and Odin and Zeus as Americans. These are our mythological heroes. There's a lot going on in the chat here. Let me catch up on that and I'll get right back with you. Let's see. The redacted computer says, as a Hispanic American, first and foremost American, first born and bred, if I see gender or ethnicity forced on me on the first pages, I won't read the rest and discard it. I'm with you on that. He says, I personally would rather read interesting stories that don't shove politics or gender, sex, race on me. Story and context matters more than what someone does in their private home. I agree. And Andy Curry, the worst editor DC ever had, they fired him and they fired a bunch of people. Well, I've got some personal stuff with Andy that we'll talk about someday. He once tweeted something out like, oh, these right-wing comic skaters, they don't like the comics because they grew up into the kind of person Batman would hate. And I'm just like, that's it right there. That's the problem with you shoving the politics in this. You claim that that's who Batman would hate because you, Andy Curry and SJW, you're intolerant bigots. You are the bigots. You are the ones who say if you voted for Trump, you're a Nazi. And Batman is like talking to Robin, and he turns to the camera, turns to the reader, the buyer, the customer, and says, "You're the problem." What the hell kind of business plan is that?
So no, it's very interesting. Like these type of people, because of the real estate in their head that their personal politics takes up, they're incapable of thinking, how would somebody who thinks completely different than me think, right? So what do instead? They project what they think about themselves, or onto these other characters, both in the good and the bad way, right? Like, well, he would spread lies about people. That's how he would act as a bad guy. Well, no, that's how you would act as a bad guy. He would study them and understand how they think, and then he would. You see what I'm saying? It's like, and this. Just one point. This bears out in political science. This bears out too. If you poll Democrats and Republicans, conservatives and liberals, right, you'll find that Democrats don't understand why conservatives act the way they are or understand exactly what they will do. Whereas conservatives both understand their own actions, but they also understand why and how they can put themselves in the shoes of the liberals. And that's one of the reasons why I think you see less of a killer instinct on the right, especially in our politics.
Well, and do you want to know why? I think I know exactly what's going on there with the intolerance from the left. They, postmodernism is a religion of self-worship. I am a god. I know everything. I believe the science. I have my master's degree. I'm educated, erudite. I'm smart. Of course I know everything. Come on, guys.
And it revolves around power.
But here's the thing. When I'm a god and I know everything and I'm college educated, blah, 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 the only way you, Scott, can disagree with me is if you're stupid or you're evil, because I'm perfect. I know everything. My opinions and my politics are always right. So the only way for people to disagree is they are dumb or they're evil or both. And that's the difference between the conservatives and the liberals right now is the conservatives, we can see their point of view. We may think it's misguided. They can't see ours. We're either stupid or bigots. And that's why they always call us that. Because they're like, well, obviously, you don't want Vita Ayala writing 8 books for Marvel because she's a person of color. He or she, I don't know her pronouns, but this person, is you don't like that their race. You know what I'm saying? So, and it's like, no, that's not it at all. If someone writes annoying garbage that isn't entertaining, I don't like that. I care less about the person writing it.
Well,
I don't care.
One of the things that I teach my kids, my wife is Asian, so we're growing up in a multi-ethnic, household.
Right.
And so one of the things that I teach my kids is like, listen, yes, you can't say that race isn't a thing, especially in America, because we have such a diverse, country. That being said, what most people are missing is that it's less about race; it's more about culture. You've got different cultures, and some of them are aligned, or have backgrounds in racial differences. But you have people from different races that embrace these cultures. For instance, show me a white suburban kid that doesn't like some sort of hip hop, right? Does that mean, no, that's not cultural appropriation, because that's part of American culture. It's just a sub.
If we're going to go into cultural appropriation, all the non-whites need to put down their iPhones and get off the internet, and no more driving cars, because Henry Ford was a white guy last time I checked. If you want to play that fucking game, we can play it. That'd be a pretty stupid game to play.
And it's a very stupid game to play, because they don't ever want to take it to the logical conclusions, right?
Right.
And so, like when, okay, so have you ever been to an African American barbecue?
Yes.
Very loud, very different than like some suburban white barbecue, right? It's just different.
Right.
Well, we, my kids were asking me about that, because I think we were watching a movie, and it was kind of stereotypical, a lot of dominoes, smashing dominoes down, and just loudness, right? It's just a good fun time. And I've been to these barbecues, and they are a ton of fun.
Right.
And I told them, I was like, listen, it's not because they're black that they're doing this. It's just their culture, right? And you have to understand that. And when people come together in groups, culture expresses itself more kind of. The individual goes away and the culture becomes more important, right? And the individual,
like, they resonate with each other and amplify each other, whatever group it is. If I'm half Mexican, half Arab, if I hang out with a bunch of Mexicans at a family party, I become more Mexican. You know what I mean?
So let me speak to your culture then, some of your cultural background, right? Like the place we moved to before we were here in Korea was El Paso. And so El Paso,
my grandmother's from El Paso.
So then the deal, man. It's 90% Hispanic in El Paso, right? And so, my kids, the school that my daughter went to, my oldest daughter, was literally 96% Hispanic, and then everything else was the 4%. Right. And she was literally the only Asian kid one school year, and then she said another Asian kid in a different grade showed up in the next year. The point is that she became exposed to all these things that are like these cultural kind of touchstones within the Hispanic community that she never understood, or she didn't know what a quinceañera was. She didn't these little things like that, and she didn't understand. I was like, listen, you got to understand, it has nothing to do with the fact that they're Hispanic, right? Racially, it has everything to do with their culture. And then what I would do is I would draw the parallels to Korean culture, because her mom's Korean, my wife's Korean, and we're in Korea now, and they have a pretty deep understanding of Korean culture. I was like, listen, the things that you are seeing are from within Korea are not because Korean people skin color is a little different, or their eyes look different, or their hair is black. It's not because of these racial indelible characteristics. It's because of their culture. And anybody, no matter what race you are, who gets who goes native within a culture, how many white people move to these places and just become totally conversant in these cultures. And the same is like within America, right? When you have like the one black guy hanging out with a bunch of white people, he starts to talk like them, and he will, same thing with Hispanics. Hispanics probably do it way better in America than anybody else, because maybe there is a little kind of connection to European culture through a lot of the Spanish culture and things like that. It's not totally different. So it's just you have to look at these cultural threads, especially in America. In Korea, it's a single culture, right? This is what you got. But in America, you got this, and they're all intertwined, and they all borrow from each other. And so it's,
I think in America, it's the details that are different, but specifically there is one culture here, and it's a culture of true believers, of daring people who said, you know what? No, I think I can invent an airplane. I think I can invent the blue jeans. I can invent jazz music. I can land on the moon. That's the one thing. If you're Asian, Jewish, black, whatever kind of American you are, the American thing is liberty, freedom of speech. Freedom of speech is freedom of thought. If you can think anything, then you can get to the moon. If you come from a cancel culture, a communist, leftist, hey, you better have the right opinion. You better agree with me because I have the college degree. If you come from that shut you down culture, you never get to the moon. There's a reason our flag is there and no one else's.
Gabe, maybe without studying, I mean, I don't know your background, but without studying it, you have hit on the important piece of American culture, which makes us different than everybody else, right? And it's the ability of the American mindset, and it's partially because of when America was formed. But
it's a self-selecting group. Think of the kind of people that would jump on a ship to come here 3 months across the ocean and leave everything behind.
But why did that happen?
Why did that happen? That wanted more.
It happened because of the Enlightenment and these ideas of the Enlightenment and the understanding that the individual is more important than the collective, right? This is the reason why we adopted the economic system we have. It's not perfect, but it's one of the most capitalistic in the world. This is why you've got the cowboy as the national hero within America, because he's the one guy. He's a guy by himself on a horse in the middle of in the middle of a plain by himself, making things happen. Right. These ideas of the stoic, singular hero. And I'm bringing this back to our cultural, touchstone in comics. Well, so what do you have? What's the singular hero? Well, you've got the Batman, you've got the Spider-Man, you've got you've got all these characters are always best on their own versus in a team. I mean, the team is great because we are social animals, but nobody wants to see Batman in the Justice League. They always want to see a Batman by himself, right? Superman is amazing when he does the things that only Superman can do. And anytime he's around other people, he is constrained from doing the things that what Superman can do. Green Lantern works best when he's in his environment, which is kind of the more cosmic kind of neighborhood. So it's an earthling interacting with all these strangers in a strange land type situation. So anyway, all of that was not to kind of bloviate on my ideas of political philosophy, but it kind of gets to, as a writer, what you need to be thinking about, how to approach these characters. They have to be, in Door Kickers, you have a team, but each of them are individuals, and each individual is good at something unique because they are unique individuals. For instance, I've got a female character on the team. Her name is Jigna. She's a Indian American, right?
Making sandwiches like most women, right? No.
she's great in the kitchen.
She's expert in laundry. Nobody can stop her.
And to offend a billion more people, she's an Indian with a dot and not a feather, right?
Oh, how dare you?
Right. So, but she's a great character. And because, she is in this she did not come to this team as a special operator in the military like Bill. Bill is the team leader. He's a former Delta guy. In the 10-page backup story in the first book, you'll see how Bill gets recruited into the Door Kickers. Jigna is actually the one who recruits him, and she comes to it from the idea of she's a spy, and so physically she is not on the level of, say, a guy like Bill, because she is about as good as she can be, but she'll never be 220 pounds. I mean, she's a 130-pound girl who, she works out like crazy. But anyway, the point is you have to look at these people as different, with different strengths and weaknesses and different motivations as to why they are in the story. But I saw that comment about the Marxist ideology, man.
Right. Yeah, I'll pop that back up there. The redacted computer says, diversity of thought is better than Marxist ideology. Diversity of thought is dissent and freedom. And that's the cultural thing we're going through right now with what the new left has become in the last just like decade, but really over the last 30, 40 years culturally, with the counterculture movement, is we're college educated. We know everything. And it's really just a worship of self as God. I cannot be questioned. Like I said before, you can only be stupid or evil to disagree with me because I'm God. Of course, I know everything. And that's why there's zero tolerance for us if we're conservative. And if you're in my audience and you're not, I don't care. I don't care. Do you like adventures? Do you like cool drawings? That's what I care about for my fans. If you're communist, Marxist, whatever, I'm fine with you, man. That's your personal business. I just don't like when they try to infringe on people and cancel them and take away their careers and stuff, because that's completely immoral. That's beyond the pale to me. So let's I wanted to catch up on the chat here real quick. Oh, we had an important question.
Yes.
Richard Falk, who's given us some good one-liners today, says, how do you deal with shipping and fulfillment of your book from Korea?
Yeah, so that's a good
customers are probably going to be in the States, I would imagine.
Well, so I have never had to fulfill a book from Korea. For instance, Peregrine is being fulfilled by the Graded 0.5 guys there in the States. My previous book, I was in El Paso when I fulfilled that, so that wasn't a problem. And I'm going to be back in the States this coming summer. So by the time I fulfill the book, we'll be ensconced back to the States. And I will be totally focused and able to mail from my local post office.
Okay.
When it comes time, yeah.
I wanted to acknowledge this person for the compliment. I appreciate it. The Redacted Computer, Gabe El Taib, is diversity of thought personified. He didn't bend the knee to the Marxist garbage at Marvel and DC and descended and stands for freedom. Absolutely. And I would say what informs that to me the most, my Christian faith. Christ said, wherever he goes, there's liberty. But also, I have a father who's a Libyan from Tripoli. He looks like Muammar Gaddafi, like he literally resembles him. And he escaped all that socialist nonsense over there and came here. And he's a Muslim. He prays 5 times a day. He's devout. My mother's a Christian. I'm a Christian. And she's Mexican and Spanish, Native American and Basque, and tiny bit Jew grandfather. My dad is Libyan and Turkish and stuff. And when you're mixed like that, and you have Christian and Muslim and all these things, you see identity politics from a young age. I see it for what it is. It's ridiculous. When I look at myself, it's like, well, is one of my hands Libyan and one is Mexican? Like, these things aren't real. Mexican isn't real. Black isn't real. Asian, none of that is real. They're just the most minute details. The only difference is inside here. Just that brain. That's the difference. What you think, what you believe, what you work hard to make yourself into, and then what you do. Do you practice what you preach? That's literally the only difference. And it's the one difference the SJWs in entertainment, comics specifically, but all entertainment, it's the one difference they won't tolerate. And it's the only real difference in humans is diversity of thought. They want diversity of color, sexual orientation, all this stuff. All of that is details that don't matter. Because there's a mean racist Asian guy, and then there's also a mean racist white guy, and also a mean racist black guy. It's their brains that are the same, those people. You know what I mean? Like, so identity politics, when you're like me and you grow up the way I did, it's a joke. It's so self-evident that it's nonsense. My best friend is a Filipino guy. I never even think about it. He's just my guy that I've known since 4th grade. I don't think about that. That means nothing to me. So, I just thank you for the compliment. But when you grow up the way I did, it's self-evident. Identity politics is actually unscientific. It's nonsense.
Yeah. It damages human relationships.
You just said what I said in 4 seconds instead of 3 minutes. Someone's busting my chops here. I don't know if you know, but I'm the ultimate 90s and 80s action fan. I got the Van Damme spinning head in the corner too. I learned how to make animated GIFs in Keynote on my Mac to add to this program.
Oh, very cool.
I do not have a Van Damme nightlight. I will not say if I have a Van Damme blanket, but that will remain unknown. But okay, so we've been going for almost an hour. I think we should wrap it up. Do you want to give a final pitch on this? A few people have backed it. I'm very happy to see that. But why don't you give us a final pitch on here, and then we'll see.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Door Kickers is a fun adventure comic. The art is great. That's what I think I've produced something that I can put on a comic stand anywhere, and it wouldn't. The thing is it would stand out as good and better than a lot of the pro stuff that's around it, which is I think that says something. But so many comics and Comicsgate. If you had a Comicsgate section on the racks of a comic store, we would put to shame almost anything that the mainstream is putting out nowadays. And I think that's important to note. If you don't back Door Kickers, there's tons of other great Comicsgate products to check out. And if you want to hear more about Door Kickers, and if you want to know kind of what's in my mind as a writer, come on over to Writers Fix Problems. I have a YouTube channel where I talk the intersection of future conflict and writing. So I have a panel of writers that I bring on who none of them are CG writers. They're almost all specialize in novels. But what we all write about are, military conflict, and usually in some sort of a possible future kind of outcome, not scientific future, but like just future of world politics. And so, last week we had a great discussion with an expert on North Korea, and we looked at the North Korea. Best Korea, right?
I saw a headline yesterday. New York Daily News kind of has outrageous headlines that I love. I don't know how true they are most of the time, but they're really funny. And it said, North Korea claims Kim Jong-un's grandfather invented the burrito.
The burrito. That's right. That's so check it out. Yeah. Kim Il-sung. Right. And so Kim,
he may have, you never know.
Kim Il-sung
in Mexico.
Anyway, his father got a hole in one every time he went golfing.
I heard that he did 18 holes in one. Yeah,
Kim Jong-un. Yeah,
yeah. I like that.
So North Korea is an interesting thing. Anyway, we went in depth on a live stream last week about North Korea. We had an expert, like a legit expert, like academic expert on North Korea, talk about. So I've been busting that live stream, that hour interview I did with him, into little 15-minute chunks on YouTube. So I got more of those coming out. Cool. And then previous to that, the week before, we talked about Ukraine. There's probably going to be a war in Ukraine eventually. And then tomorrow, if you guys have been following any of the news, we are going to talk about the Kazakhstan issue that's popped up this week. And what we've seen is a Russian intervention over there. So what could this mean to the Ukrainian situation, but also just looking how fast the situation in Kazakhstan devolved? How could that potentially happen in America? Because there's a lot of Civil War II talk in the news recently. If anybody who watches Timcast IRL, you hear the word Civil War to pop up all the time. So it's definitely in a lot of people's minds that's the kind of stuff that we talk about over there. So if you're interested in any of that kind of stuff, I recommend you come and check it out.
And all of I put his Twitter and this Indiegogo project and his YouTube. What was the name of that YouTube?
It's Writers Fix Problems.
Writers Fix Problems. I put links to all those in the description. So now, guys, I want you all to I made this too in Keynote, that animated subscribe button. It's a little blurry. It's probably too low res. I'll have to make another one. But I found a YouTube video that showed how to make transparent GIFs and add them to your StreamYard. So I was like, oh, that's cool. I can have my spinning Van Damme head like I wanted. So please subscribe to this channel. Hit the like. Share this. Just hit share and then send it to your Twitter. Send it to your Facebook. We like to go deep here and have intellectual conversations. I never met you before today, Scott. We never really talked a few Twitter exchanges. Very impressed. You're a sharp guy. I really like it. So I know the content of this book is going to be really great. So I was worried that you were what do the Navy say about you? You guys are like crayon eaters or something like that.
That's right. You're thinking of the Marines. That's the Marines.
Oh, that's right. Oh,
the Army is just boring.
How great was the Army-Navy football game? Now, I'm a Navy guy because I live in San Diego. All my friends' dads, my father-in-law, my sort of grandfather, and other family members, all ex-Navy, all former Navy. So we watched the Navy game last month, and it was a nail-biter, and the Navy pulled it off. Were you heartbroken, or do you not care?
Well, the Army's been a lot better in the last few years. I mean, I don't put a lot of emotional interest into Army football, but that being said, it's always a big deal in the Army, and you always want your home team to win. So, that was a little bit of a disappointment, but especially as good as we've been doing lately. So what are you going to do?
One thing I love, it's my favorite football game of the year, even more than the Super Bowl, is the Army-Navy game every year. The pomp and circumstance, the tradition. The commander-in-chief is there. Not this year.
Not this year.
Got a warm welcome. But one thing I love as an artist, as a designer, is that they make the sickest uniforms just for that game every year. And the Navy this year had the Navy Air Force, not Air Force, but what do you call the Navy? The pilot. It's for their Navy jets.
I don't remember. I know.
Yeah, they have the G.I. Joe symbol, that circle star with the 3 stripes and everything.
Right.
And silver and blue. Oh my gosh. And then the Army was in like a light brown Marpat. You know what I mean? It was amazing.
Right.
Every year they have awesome
real real quick in the chat, Tari Owen asked me if I'm on Instagram, and the answer is yes. I'm on Instagram. So it's the same tag on Instagram as Twitter, except there's an H on the end. So it's M Scott McCullough with the H. So I can't fit enough. Oh, and I'm on Getter too, by the way. You talked about that earlier. Same tag as Twitter on Getter. So
okay, and I think Ronan puts a bow on this episode for us nicely. He says Biden is who I think he means by he didn't go to the Army-Navy game because no one wanted to explain to him who's popular Brandon fellow is.
That's exactly right.
That's a perfect way to end it. Backdoor Kickers. Subscribe to this channel, like and retweet. Thank you so much, Scott McCullough. It was fantastic.
Thanks for having me, man.
All right. Bye, guys. Talk to you later.